Hello, and welcome to the Xtreme channel. My name is Mr. X, and you are watching Xtreads in November 2019 as it pertains to statues in the Xtreme collection. Damn, that's a long title. What does that mean? Xtreads is Xtreme Reads. They're comic book related material that Mr. X has read in the last month, and we are going to talk about the comic books themselves and how they pertain to statues either in the Xtreme collection or statues on purchase order that are coming to the Xtreme collection. Going to do today a little bit differently. First, if you haven't noticed, it's cold and snowy outside, so we got our robe, we got our coffee, we got the fireplace going, we got a little something something to add to our coffee. Second, the format, we're not going to separate everything, we're just going to kind of go through the stories, and then as we're going to talk about the art as we go, we're going to talk about the storyline, and we're going to talk about statues. So I advise you to get your little something something and join me. Welcome to Xtreads November 2019. These are comic books that I have read in the last month and how they pertain to statues. We're going to talk about the storylines of the comic books. We're going to talk about the art that's in the comic books. We're going to talk about the statues that may or may not be directly derived from the comic books. We are not going to talk about the authors. We are not going to talk about the books themselves because that's kind of, I don't enjoy it. So if you enjoy that, I advise you to not watch. Well, there might be something you enjoy here, talking to you. Anyway, we're going to jump right in. So this month, I didn't really have a lot of time, and I only got two things knocked out. I got Batman Damned, the hardcover, which was really interesting. It was just released this month, and it was an interesting read. And there was a lot of naked Batman in there, so we'll talk about that. Then we have Venom Omnibus, Venom Omnibus Volume 1. If you don't know what an omnibus is, you're like me about a year ago. An omnibus is one of the greatest inventions known to man. When I was young, we had to go buy a comic book and then wait a few weeks for the next reissue. These are a collection of all the stories in a semi-sequential order. So some of the, for example, in Venom, some are directly from Venom comics, some are directly from Hulk comics, some are directly from Nightwatch comics, and they put them in so it's kind of a linear story. And the great thing about this is there's tons in here. While it's pricey, $100 or depending, around that range, it takes a long time to read. So we're actually only going to review half of this because it's almost too much Venom if we go through the whole thing. Plus, I've only read half of it. We're going to do the other half next month, and then we have tons of other omnibuses and single edition hard and trade back covers that we have coming in that actually I think arrived on Friday. I haven't gone through the mail yet. You don't even know what day it is that I'm filming this. But I want to start with Venom. So this was the first omnibus I ever bought, and I bought it recently because I'm a huge Venom fan. Not only that, but it had a collection of a lot of the Venom comics I had growing up. And it was interesting as I read through a lot of these, some of them were like, oh shit, I remember that, or that's not how I remembered it. So first thing I want to do is I want to talk about the different stories that are in here. He essentially collaborates with and or against, and most of the time it's and. So at the beginning of the story, he's fighting with them, and then towards the end of the story, they're fighting together to defeat a common foe. But tons and tons of different characters. You see him obviously with Spider-Man, fighting a whole bunch of other symbiotes. You see him with Punisher. You see him with Silver Sable. Darkhawk, who's one of my absolute favorites. You see him go against Juggernaut in a really interesting episode we're going to talk about. Or not episode, but how would you label that? Story. Morbius. You see him go toe-to-toe against and then with Morbius. And then Demogoblin. That's how I pronounce it. Deal with it. Hulk, as I said earlier. And then there's more and more kind of characters that are secondary or just a brief appearance. So we're not really going to talk too much about those. But that's the first half of the omnibus. And we're going to dive right in and just talk about some of the stories. Some of the stories we're going to skip over. But first, the first 6 issues are Lethal Protector. And this is my Venom. This is the Venom I grew up with. This is the Venom I love. Most of you guys know I have a custom Venom that I kind of call my Lethal Protector Venom. Here's a picture of it right here. Fully paid off. They're just trying to find a cheaper way to ship it to the States. I think it's been ready for a couple months, but who knows when I'm going to get it. But I have so many different Venoms. I'm fine with waiting. And here's a few shots from the Lethal Protector series to kind of give you an idea why I think that Venom is pretty close to the one in the comics here. Obviously, I think one major difference is he has more of a blue suit in the comics here, but I personally like black better on statues. And in this story, the first 3 issues are kind of stupid. But when it gets to issues, I believe 4, 5, and 6, he actually collaborates with Spider-Man. Spider-Man's been looking for him, and they fight against a whole bunch of symbiotes. And some of these symbiotes are actually being made into statues. These are kind of the Sons of Carnage, I believe. I can't remember the exact name. And it's the classic Spider-Man, too. That's the cool thing. It's just like my Spider-Man comiquette. I don't know if you can see him behind Dead Man here. But you know what Spider-Man comiquette looks like. If you don't, Google it, or I should review it sometime. Or check out one of my other videos. You can always see him. So I do dig the story. It's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool introduction. And this is also, for the record, if you're not familiar with Venom, you know, he was evil for the longest time, and he's crazy now, but he thinks he's a good guy, so he tries to do good guy things. And this whole omnibus is indicative of that. It's that part of his life, at least the first half that I've read. And after that, he teams up with Punisher. And I wasn't a big fan of the story. I like the concept. I currently don't own any Punisher statues. I have a few on order, including Sideshow's premium format, the new one here, which wouldn't go well with the story at all. But he teams up with him to fight someone else, and after they fight each other, I think every single person he teams up with, he fights at the beginning. And then moving on, there's Silver Sable. I wasn't a big fan of that version at all. There's one issue where he fights Iron Man, which is pretty neat. There's no Iron Man statues that really are portrayed directly from the comic, but I enjoyed it. And then Darkhawk. Darkhawk was one of my favorite comic books growing up, and I completely forgot about him until I started reading this omnibus. And I wish somebody would do a Darkhawk statue, so I'm dropping a hint there for somebody. Very, very cool. And then the next 2, I'm actually going to talk about the storylines. Venom, the Madness. This was one of my favorite ones growing up as a kid, and I did not like it as an adult. Essentially, in this one, Venom is... Eddie Brock is fighting with this symbiote of who's going to be dominant, and then they fall into some toxic poison, and the toxic poison merges with them in the suit, and it kind of drives him crazy. It not only drives him crazy on a regular level where he's starting to go nuts and his suit gets pimped out. Check this out. He has extra heads, which look really cool. I like the art in this, but... he goes into an insane realm where, you know, Ghost Rider, or a representation of Ghost Rider, is there. You see hints that Logan was there, kind of all the other superheroes that have a screw loose. And in the end, he ends up fighting it off and becoming normal. But the cool thing is he fights Jugger in this. He fights Jugs the entire time. And it's kind of a weird-looking Jugs. When you look at different statues, no Jugs is really comparative to this. But... I have one Jugs. It's the old Halama, where he's cracking his fists, and then a couple on order. But nothing really struck me from the statue-related version of here. And then the next story, The Enemy Within. This was probably my favorite story I read so far. What it was is there's all these goblins. He's living in San Francisco throughout most of these stories. There's all these goblins that are being controlled by another source. And Morbius, who's one of my favorite characters, he actually gets involved with this. He's wearing more of a green suit than he is here in the statue. Check out these pictures. Morbius gets involved where, as usual, him and Venom fight, and then they team up. And then it turns out that apparently Demogoblin is leading the goblins. And I'm really excited because I actually have a Demogoblin statue on order, a custom one. Here's a picture of it right here. Pretty cool. And I'm not going to tell what happens in the end, but pretty neat to see all three of those characters go together. Very dark characters. However, the comic keeps it really light, which I really appreciate. And overall, there's just some cool imagery from all the different stories here. Here's some pictures of ones I missed earlier. I don't think it's amazing. It's not breathtaking like some of the stuff I read last month, like Old Man Logan and Batman Noel. It's very more cartoony. I don't really necessarily appreciate the art as much other than some of the covers. But definitely entertaining. I did find myself going back to this over and over, kind of forcing myself. So it wasn't one of those things like Old Man Logan where I just couldn't put down. So that was a little disappointing because when I was a kid it was completely the opposite. So we'll see how the second half goes. And I haven't decided which omnibus I'm going to read next. I have Fantastic Four, Lucifer, Hulk Planet, Hulk World War. It's probably going to be one of those. X-Men Age of Apocalypse. We'll kind of look at the statues. Probably Hulk, because Gladiator Hulk Premium Format, our maquette is coming out soon. Here's a picture of that. So let's move on to the DC. Batman Damned. And I purchased this. It's brand new, just came out. Pretty excited because I knew nothing about the story, but I knew about the statues. The statues I'm referring to are from Prime 1 Studios. Here is their Batman Damned version, and it's a pretty cool piece. Really excited to get it. I have tons of 1/3 scale Prime 1 Batmans, but this one has some awesome switch out heads, which some of these don't even pertain to the story. But more excited, one of my most anticipated pieces is the Joker statue. Check this out right here. I've been waiting for a 1/3 Joker that just blows me away, and this was definitely it. But it was honestly really disappointing in the book because he had a very small role. So we're going to go through some of the storyline here, and if you don't want any spoilers, turn it off. But first, I do want to say the imagery in this book, just like Batman Noel, was breathtaking. It was really, really cool. It was really dark. I stopped myself just looking at the pictures. Again, it was more of a difficult read because things were kind of all over the place to figure out what's going on. Obviously, definitely not for kids, especially the fact that Batman's a whole bunch of naked in it. And I mean naked. I found that interesting. Those I did not stare at that long. Maybe I did. No. Did I? Anyway, so let's talk about this guy. Interesting storyline. Batman wakes up in an ambulance, and he's very badly injured, and he finds out Joker is dead. And of course, he beats all the people up in the ambulance and escapes. And Constantine, who I'm not very familiar with, tells him, hey, I'll help you find out what happened. If you killed him, what's going on? So the whole story is him investigating what happened to Joker. Is Joker really dead? There's signs that he's not. And he runs into a plethora of characters. A couple of the characters he runs into throughout the whole story, Deadman is in there. And he's annoying as fuck. That's all I have to say. He's just really annoying. He's not the badass statue that this is right here. So that's disappointing to me. Made me have less appreciation for the character. I guess ignorance is bliss because I didn't have much knowledge. So hopefully he's not annoying like that in all the different comics. But he's throughout the entire thing, Deadman is. Another interesting one, not a statue I have, but they had an interesting take on Harley Quinn. Here's some pictures. I wish they would make a statue of her like this. This is really cool. I would buy this, especially since I'm getting the Joker and the other Batman from the story. Another interesting one, he actually runs into Swamp Thing, which is kind of crazy. So he runs into Swamp Thing, and I'm not going to go down the storyline, but it reminds me of Prime 1's Swamp Thing, which is a piece that I had to practice #restraint on. Such a very, very cool piece, but it's just too big and costs too much money. And as they're trying to figure out what's going on, there's a backstory going on, and there's some demon from his past, and you don't know if it's a vision or if it's really there, kind of reminding him about when he was a child. And when he was a child, apparently his dad was cheating on him, which isn't really a surprise that a billionaire would have a mistress. But there's all this guilt, and one part of it, he actually takes a gun and his mother yells at him for using the gun, and I think that's why Batman doesn't do any killing. So I like that the foreshadowing there, or it wouldn't be foreshadowing, backshadowing, whatever you call that, kind of shows that that's why Batman doesn't like to take a life, and that's why he's so guilted throughout this thing, because he thinks he may have killed Joker. And in the end, he fights his demons, whether it's in the real world or in his mind, as he's trying to figure out what's going on, and he runs into a whole bunch of different characters. And at the end, he thinks he finds Joker, and then essentially he does confirm Joker's dead, and then Joker walks away. I'm going to say that again. He thinks he finds Joker alive, but Joker's dead, then Joker walks away. That's the ending. It is really weird. I don't understand it. Yeah. Weird, huh? But some of the imagery, take a look at some of these shots here. Very, very cool. I like this this dark aspect to Batman. Really makes you think of, the fact that he's a vigilante. I like some of the demonic part they put in it with, the bats and the demon that keeps plaguing him about his past. Some of the scenes where he's talking to Constantine are just really, really cool. And I don't know if I'm showing pictures in the right order here, for the record. Pretty neat. Again, kind of a hard read. That's the one thing I like about the Venom Omnibus here. It's a very easy read. And when I say hard read and easy read, it's not that it's difficult to understand, but you really have to pay attention. And I'm a big multitasker. I'm always doing 5 or 6 things. Like while I'm reading these, I'm usually answering something on my phone and watching TV. I can do that with Venom and completely know everything that's going on. I can't do that with Batman Damned. So moving forward, when we talk about hard reads and easy reads, that's what we're going to allude. This upcoming month, I got a whole bunch of stuff in. Like I said, I found a bunch of stuff from In-Stock Trades Damaged. A bunch of hardbacks, and I think the Lucifer Omnibus, I really want to read that next too, but it's probably going to be Hulk we're going to do next. So I have a lot of traveling come up, and I don't want to travel with any omnibuses. Kind of a big pain in the ass. But yeah, let me know what you guys read this month. I am really digging this new segment, not only reading the stuff, but actually talking about it. And I think they're just going to get better and better. I already feel like this month flowed better than last month. Flowed better. But I really appreciate you guys watching. Let me know in the comments what you read this month, especially if it pertains to any statues. I'm really digging how this ties in. This month wasn't as direct as last month, obviously. Because I had statues that were made specifically from that story. And again, I will have some Batman Damned ones when those release in 2020. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. And cheers.